Oh, the ache, oh, the cruel need. Heather turned away from following Reese. She thought about her growing sentiments. She wanted to go after Reese, but she wasn't sure what they were exactly. Reese had said many times in France that she'd let Heather and her children live with her, reassuring her with her repeated promises. She said that they could stay as long as Heather liked. Heather hoped it could be forever. Was she foolish to dream so? But you haven't even met my children. What if you don't like them? They're yours. I'll like them, Reese replied as sure as ever. Reese? Heather. Thank you. It's all she could think to say. She didn't want to live with her cousins in the Midlands. They could find and live with Hugh's mother, if they had to, but she had neatly retired in the countryside with some friends. Heather didn't want to impose upon anyone, but she was aware that she was taking a risky leap. Reese couldn't hide anything about herself. This new era was one with its eyes cast wide open. Reese looked exactly like what most people thought a Sapphist would be, with her masculine dress and her unapologetic swagger. Heather would not be an immediate suspect. She was a single mother, a war widow. Most people would not automatically assume she and Reese had anything in common, but Heather knew when looking into Reese's steady amber eyes that there was something between them. It was a sure thing. It would grow organically. If Heather didn't feel so nervous about it, she felt she owed Reese a big debt. Why would anyone want to take on the burden of a widow and her two children? Could it be that Reese loved her? She wanted to confirm what Reese thought. They gave them one bed. Thinking little of their traveling together, two women, friends they must be, was this a test? On the first night, Heather looked to Reese uncertainly. You can have the bed, unless us sharing it won't bother you, Reese said carefully. You're not sleeping on the floor. Don't even consider it for a moment, Reese St. John. Heather snapped, offended. She hated the idea that Reese kept offering things like that. She kept giving Heather the option to turn away from her to have her own space. It will be too cold and dirty down there. I can share. It's supposed to be a cold night besides. Reese smiled. All right, I didn't want the floor, but I also don't want to impose upon you. Impose? Reese was the one paying for their rooms. She wouldn't let Heather pay for anything, snatching bills with such speed and chicken scratching her signature on papers when necessary. Heather didn't mind that they slept in a tangle in those hotel beds. Reese seemed to gravitate towards her in her sleep, and her arms wrapped around Heather in a gentle embrace. Heather didn't mind it. In fact, she enjoyed the sensation of being held. She sometimes drifted towards her in that last year of the war. She'd even cried over Reese's injured leg when she thought Reese was sleeping. Brave fool, that man could have killed you, Reese St. John. And then I would have no one left who even tries to understand me. You're my best friend here. I was so scared, and I can't even tell you how truly terrified I was, Heather whispered at Reese's bedside, when she thought she slept, but no, those beloved eyes opened and looked up at her with such tenderness. I'm so sorry, honey. I didn't mean to hurt you. Normally I'm not so reckless, but the men could have been killed if I didn't act. Oh, Heather, I'll try to be more careful in the future, Reese had whispered, aware of where they were. Everyone was trying to sleep. Many injured men lay in the quiet. It was night, long, dark, and lonely. Heather slipped her hand into Reese's own. You'd better, Heather sniffed, and Reese clutched her hand reassuringly. I will, Heather. I want us to go back to England together and bring your children home. I want us to all have a wonderful life together. Heather wanted that too, more than anything. After losing Hugh, she felt herself numb to life for several weeks, months. She didn't mean to fall into this deep friendship with Reese St. John. The younger woman kept appearing when she needed someone to talk to. She kept saying all the right things, offering Heather the comfort she yearned for. Well, as much as she dared to. Reese pulled away from her often and seemed to be silently holding back. Heather recalled the pain she felt when Sally pulled away from her many years earlier. Heather, you can still go on. We can both still marry and forget about all of this. Sally had forced herself to say those things. She didn't want Heather to feel the boiling hate of the world. She sometimes cried for both Sally and Hugh, too. Her loves both long gone and no longer reachable in this life. Sally married a moneyed American man and went with him across the ocean, never to return to her native England's green shores. New country, new Sally. Oh, don't cry for me, Heather. Don't you see how I've done you a wonderful favor? Go with that handsome young soldier who's keen on you. Live a lovely little life and make your family proud now, you hear me? Sally tried to seem jolly at her prospects. Her businessman was aloof and entirely unaware of her history. But Heather didn't like him because she blamed him for spiriting Sally away over the Atlantic, never to return. Heather remembered that distant night on the docks, with tears blinding her vision as Sally and her American businessman took off across the Atlantic. But here was Heather's chance at a new start with Reese. She recalled her failures with Sally in a sort of haze. The weight of Reese's body pressed against her own made her aware they were extremely close. She hadn't been this close to anyone since before Hugh died, several years before that even. She last slept with him in 1914, before he was called off to the front. It was a desperate sort of frenzy to their love-making then. Heather had feared the worst, and Hugh refused to consider it a possibility. He didn't want to frighten her with the idea of his death. Reese seemed to be sleeping and appeared unaware that she had rolled herself up against Heather's back. Heather heard Reese's breathing, reassuring as everything about her was. "You're young and too generous for your own good, Reese St. John. I believe I must protect you from your own goodness. It nearly killed you. Oh, it's too awful to reconsider. I just don't want you to think that I'm taking advantage. I want you to know my heart would be in this, if yours is too." Heather whispered to the sleeping woman beside her. Reese had already fallen into a deep sleep. She might have been dreaming, for she seemed to twitch a bit. Heather gently shifted so that she faced Reese now. She cried softly then, "You're my saving grace, my angel in suspenders and trousers. Whatever you need from me, I just want to help you, Reese." Reese woke before Heather. The pillow was wet with Heather's late-night tears. This troubled her. She knew Heather had been overwhelmed lately. They were still thinking and acting like the war was on, though it had ended 3 weeks ago. Peacetime was still too new a concept for them. "Oh, pretty lady, you don't have to cry so. We're safe now. I'm going to build a life for us, so you don't have to be so scared anymore. I can promise you that, too. We're going to this big, beautiful house, and you can have any room you want. And so can each of your children. I'm inheriting it when my Uncle Stephen dies. He has said so, and it's declared in his will. The family properties are mine, and anything that's mine will also be yours too, Heather, if that's what you want." She kissed that cool cheek. She tasted salty like freshly shed tears, much to Reese's concern. Heather remained sleeping. Reese decided she'd go get them something to eat that might help Heather's mood improve. Who didn't like to wake up to a tray full of hot breakfast? An hour later, the smell of fresh coffee and cooked bacon stirred Heather from her sleep. "Good morning," Reese said brightly as she saw Heather sit up. She was sitting in the chair by the desk, coffee in hand and a newspaper in the other. "Reese! Oh, good morning." Heather looked sleepy with confusion at the breakfast Reese had brought back. Of her dreams she dare not speak. She had kissed Reese. They kept going, too, far further than she had ever gone with Sally. She knew because she had gone to some of the clubs with Sally before the war. They were more daring than anyone thought, but still they never went as far as they could have. "You're still mine, and I'm still yours, even if we don't do that sort of thing," Sally had insisted. "Why didn't we at least try it, Sally? What were you afraid of? That I'd like it too much?" Those women in the club didn't seem to care if people knew what they wanted to do. Heather recalled one of those bold women flirting with her, thinking that Sally was with someone else. Indeed, Sally had gone to powder her nose and left Heather to her own devices. This woman who approached Heather appeared confident, likely around 30 years old, petite of frame, with short red hair and sharp black eyes. She had come up to Heather and started chatting her up. She was at once both excited and a bit frightened. Sally seemed threatened when she came back to Heather's side. "Heather, what did she want from you?" "Nothing yet, Sally." "That is Valerie Farrar. If you're seen with her, you might as well go shout about us in the street. She's known in society as a lesbian. She doesn't care what anyone thinks. Astonishing, don't you think?" Sally looked to Valerie Farrar in awe and amazement. "I suppose so." Miss Farrar had gone off to play what looked like a drinking game with her friends and their girlfriends. Heather watched them from afar, still thinking on how intrigued Valerie seemed by her. Something might be there. "You don't owe anyone a damn thing, darling. You don't have to be afraid of me. Shoot, if I scare you, then I'll leave you be. But you are here for a reason. You had to think about it long and hard before you came in here. I commend you on that alone. Most girls aren't that brave. They just want to do what their parents tell them to. And to be fair, it's all society wants out of women. Sit down, be pretty, and obey. Well, I don't feel like sitting. I'm not all that pretty, and I sure as hell am not listening to that crap." She slapped her jeweled hand down on the bar for emphasis. Heather didn't turn away. She didn't know what to say to this woman who seemed to appear from an alternate universe created by the atmosphere of this club. "Sally, would it be so bad if we were more like Valerie Farrar?" "Yes, it would be. She has money and her own means. Neither of us can do what she does. She tosses her money around to supply her lovers with whatever they want. It's a totally different lifestyle. So we can't be lesbians because we're not rich. We're from middle-class families, and being a lesbian is only something that rich women can do." Heather couldn't believe it. "We're both going to have to get married sooner or later, Heather. Come on, you know that." Why did Sally insist on bringing them into the lesbian club if she was simply going to dismiss the world inside as an impossible dream for them? Bitterness rose up in Heather's throat. "I love another woman, and I shouldn't have to be rich in order to love her." She wanted to scream, but who would hear her? Sally would have been appalled, and the other women in the club would pity her unenviable circumstance. Sally wouldn't be her lover in that way. Heather did a wicked thing. She decided to approach Valerie this time. Women around were laughing, smoking, and half drunk. Heather appeared to Valerie. She looked much like the first girl Valerie had ever loved, half her lifetime ago. "Oh, and you've decided I'm not so scary after all." "Far from it, Miss Farrar. I admire your openness and honesty," Heather said, sure to meet her eye as they spoke. "Please call me Val," came the quick reply. "Sit by me if you're not in too much of a hurry to rush off into the night." Val moved over to make space for Heather on the couch beside her. "I'm leaving soon. I don't want to bother you and your friends." Val thought for a moment and gave her card to Heather. "Another time, then. Call me whenever you'd like. Miss Heather Baker." "Heather Baker. I look forward to our next meeting." Heather went to Val and told her everything. Val made them drinks and sat listening carefully to Heather's pained confession. "It's a hazard of our kind of love. A lot of women feel guilty that they don't love men or want them sexually. There's nothing wrong with that," Val had said, handing a wine glass to Heather. "I would think that men would want women who actively want them. I hate it when I realize a woman doesn't want me like I want her." Heather wanted Val. At least she was confident that she could learn something from her. She had been carefully watching her every move. Sally didn't give her the satisfaction. "It makes me feel terribly disgusting to keep being rebuffed by one I'd do anything for," Heather admitted. This shocked Val, who found Heather absolutely lovely. How tasteless was this Sally? "You're terribly beautiful, you know. Any man or woman would be out of their mind not to want you," Val said, flicking her eyes up into Heather's. It was such an intense gaze that Heather couldn't look away. "I have had romantic, passionate dreams about Sally, but ever since that day in the club, my dreams have been about you instead," Heather said, drawing Val to her side. "I can help you live those dreams if you'd like," Val offered. She gently moved Heather's hair aside and then kissed her exposed neck. Heather felt a heat rising in her and allowed Val to keep kissing her. "I want to know what loving a woman feels like." Val certainly knew, and lived in that knowledge, reveling in its wisdom, embodying the meaning and life of an unapologetic sapphist. There could be no one that Heather could have learned better from. Heather somehow managed to keep Sally from knowing about Val, but it was difficult. Sally had started seeing her American, and that made Heather jealous. She gave more time and attention to Val in response. Sally didn't know, and Val was becoming extremely fond of and attached to Heather. "Going to London in a week. Come with me then. Take you shopping and to this wonderful tea house. It's absolutely divine." "No, I don't think I feel well enough for such a trip. Thank you, Val." "Heather, my darling, you haven't lived until you've summered in France. We must go. Make all the arrangements. Trust me, you will just adore it." "Val, that's generous of you, but I don't think I could accept such an extravagant gift." "Please think about it at least. If you've never been abroad before, France is a good starting point." Val seemed desperate to show Heather off to her friends. Heather kept dodging around an onslaught of invitations to increasingly expensive, exclusive establishments which she could never afford nor get into by herself. "I don't want to go anywhere unless you want to go upstairs." "Sure, of course, if that's what you want." Val shrugged and walked ahead of Heather. She did seem a bit disappointed, because every attempt she made to get Heather to go anywhere with her outside her mansion was thwarted. Val sat next to Heather in bed, looking out the window across the green of her estate. Heather was lying back, pleased with herself to get what she had hoped for. Going in her blissful state, she slowly replayed everything Val did to her in her head, sighing in recollection. "I don't understand. Most of the women I was with in the past jumped at the chance to spend my money. You don't seem to care about it at all. Why not?" Val asked, as this seemed to trouble her. "Can you accept there might be a woman who is more interested in your body than your money?" Val turned over to Heather and kissed her lips hard. This time she opened her eyes and embraced Val as fiercely as she could. Heather was in shambles. She was not proud that she had two lovers at once, one that was afraid to fully love her and another that was begging to. Val must have realized when she saw Heather walking home in the rain that something was terribly wrong. "Darling, what is the matter?" Val ran outside, disregarding the rain. She cast her own coat off to cover Heather and pulled her into the club out of the bad weather. Sally was gone and nothing mattered. That's what Heather felt, dead to any other feeling. Her best friend left her for a man she pretended to like. She thought they needed to grow up and get over their schoolgirl affinity for each other. Heather wanted to scream when Sally said that, as if she truly believed it. Val was no schoolgirl. She was all of 27 and knew full well what she wanted for herself. Heather's passion for other women was not childish, nor was it entirely innocent. She reflected then in a mute horror what she had done to Val because Sally refused a full relationship with her. Val did not hold back. She refused Heather nothing. In fact, it was Heather who kept constantly refusing her offers of trips, fine meals, and expensive gifts of clothing and jewelry. "I am a woman who loves other women, and I don't give a damn about who knows it," is what Val proclaimed by walking down the street every day as herself. Sally was scared of women like Val. Heather realized then. She herself was also a bit intimidated, but she had taken Val for her lover. She wasn't really scary at all. Heather felt how extremely careful Val had been around her. She saved the boldness and bravado for her friends and public persona. Val the lover and Val the public entity were two entirely different women. Heather didn't wonder why Val seemed to easily win women over. She saw how girls in the club fawned over her, but now she turned away from them every time. She considered herself already spoken for, and the other women her age who weren't pleased with Heather thought her a fool. "Val, honey, she's not one of us. I don't trust the look of her. She's going to follow after that fickle little friend of hers. She's going to marry the soldier, and you'll have nothing." "Soldier? No, you must be thinking of another girl, not my Heather." But as Heather sat there, shivering, stunned at Val's side, she wasn't with her. Sally had pushed her towards Hugh Sparrow, this handsome young soldier. "Any girl would be glad to have him, Heather. Dear, you're prettier than most of the others in this town. I'm not just saying that because I love you, it's the honest truth. And he's such a dear man, you know. I think you'd grow fond of him, and quickly, if you'd just give him a proper chance." "But Sally—" Heather immediately protested, hating how childish she sounded. "But nothing, dear. If you love me, you'd heed my advice. I'm only looking out for your best interest, after all." Heather looked then to Val, who so sure she was the only lover Heather had, and burst into tears. "Here it comes now, the moment of truth," one of the other women said. Val's confident smile slipped off her face as she turned to look at Heather. It was a pleading look. "Surely they're talking about someone else. Surely it isn't you who they saw with the soldier." Heather knew Val's friends hated her, had little toleration for her kind of girl, the one who could go between their world and the wider world with a silent ease that none of them could. They could live in the wider world, but it would kill them slowly to do, for to do it would be to deny them their very souls. "You think that because you're young and so pretty that you can just treat everyone else like crap, don't you?" one of Val's friends snapped. "No, I don't even think I'm pretty, even." Oh, come off it. You know what you are. Men and women want you. If we go by outer beauty alone, they'd be blind and dumb not to. That means you have the pick of the town. You've played our field, and you've took one of our best girls for yourself. She's going half mad trying to keep you. Can't you see what you've done to Val? You don't think it's cruel? Val said nothing, deeply embarrassed that her friends were finally admitting that they all thought Heather was one of her greatest mistakes. She didn't know I get easily attached. We know. We've seen these affairs ruin your life. Heather could be different. Val, sweetie, trust us, she's not. Val looked haplessly between her waterlogged lover and her angry friends. Tell them, Heather, it's all a big misunderstanding, right? Heather looked out the window and thought she saw a young man walking home in the rain. Hugh Sparrow. She had grown used to watching him from her own window, that she recognized his walk from this distance. Sally had encouraged him to propose to Heather. She had accepted because Sally, her American, and Hugh all seemed to want her to. Her mind frayed because when he kissed her, she closed her eyes and thought about being in bed with Val. I have 3 lovers. 3 lovers. One, my best friend, is going to marry another and leave this land for her new life. The second, a dashing soldier who is trying to marry me. The third, an ardent sapphist who wants to whisk me away overseas and make me hers in some far-off foreign place. She cast a tear-stained glance at Val, regretting it all. I'm sorry, Val. You deserve better than me. Your friends are right to hate me. I'm simply no good. The coat wrapped around Heather belonged to that woman who loved her like it was a lost language between them. Val's coat was even warm with her heat and smelled faintly of her lightly spiced cologne, which she had ordered special from Paris. You should take this back from me. You need it to get home in, and I'm no good for you. I don't think I could be. Heather stammered, loathing herself. At least Val wasn't alone. She had her friends and dozens of other women about her. She'd forget about Heather. At least that's what the young bride-to-be told herself over and over again. Turned the coat into the gracious hands of its owner, and then dashed out of the club door to chase after Hugh's fading figure. 4 years later, Heather returned to the town in which she and Hugh wed. She was walking along the street, her infant son in her arms, pregnant with her second child. Antony was the boy's name, and he looked so much like Hugh that she was astonished that there was so little of herself in the boy. She adored the child, and was surprised, too, at how quickly she carried another little life within her. She hoped for a girl, but would be just as pleased for another boy. The child was hers and Hugh's, after all. That's all she wanted now. She felt safe in her marriage, and she knew that she was respectable now as a soldier's wife. But that doesn't mean she didn't sometimes think of the woman she loved pathetically, and the woman who loved her just as strongly. Sally ceased to exist, now permanently fixed in America. So, of course, Sally wasn't the woman who met Heather then at the store. No, it was Val, now in her early 30s, with a wide-brimmed hat and a cape over her shoulder. Heather Sparrow. She took her hat off and approached the tired young mother cautiously. Val Farrar? Oh, hello. I'm surprised you even want to talk to me. Terribly to see her former lover looking so achingly tired. Her weakness had long been single mothers. Her new lover, Betsy, was a prideful mother who had a teenage daughter named Reese. Reese admired Val, who took them both for rides in her impressive car. She was the only person in the whole county who had such a machine at her command. This was still a few years before the war. I can give you a ride wherever you need to go, Heather. It won't be any trouble. Val, you're still too kind to me, I don't think. Never mind any of that. You look exhausted. Besides, think of the babies. You will be tired if you walk all the way home with that heavy bag and the child in your arms. In your condition, I won't allow it. Val insisted that she assist Heather. I don't want to trouble you. You won't. I want to help you. Please, Heather, just let me help you. Heather went with Val, who took the heavy bag over one shoulder and also took Heather's son on her other hip and secured him around the middle with her arm. Heather held on to Val's other arm, with the bag on her able shoulder. The baby seemed oddly unmoved by this stranger holding him so surely. He reached up and played with one of her studded ears, the red jewel catching his attention. You don't have to. Heather started, but Val shook her head insistently. I have nearly a dozen cousins who love leaving their kids with me, little ones like me, oddly enough. I don't know why, but they always have. Heather's Antony was in good hands, which she already knew. The baby kept grabbing at Val's earring, distracted long enough to be carried to the car. "Did you forget your hat, Heather?" Val even handed her hat over to Heather, who kept shading her eyes with her hand. Heather felt embarrassed for her past actions. She wanted to disappear into the mist for how badly she had treated Val before. "You needn't be so kind." "I'm just helping a lady that needed it. You look like you needed someone." Val shrugged as if it were nothing. Heather wanted to say she didn't need anyone, but that wasn't true. He was off with the other soldiers. He couldn't rush to her aid, though she had thought about him coming to save her some days. She had insisted that she was strong enough to handle everything herself, but how nice it was to have someone to help her. "Thank you, Val." "It takes a lot to raise babies. No one ever commends any woman enough. I watched my mother and then my cousins raise all their children. It's real hard work." "You're strong, sure, but even strong women get tired, all the same," Val said gently. Heather sighed. She didn't know what to say to that. She had never heard anyone acknowledge that obvious truth aloud. She was exhausted. She only had one baby, and another coming. She couldn't imagine what several more would be like. Yet many married women she knew had 4, 5, or even 6 children. Little Antony and the one yet born seemed the perfect number to her. Val looked uncertainly at Heather sitting in the car seat beside her. "You are happy, though, aren't you, Heather?" The question shocked her to her core. Val slowly drove down the road in the direction Heather had indicated their small house was. She held her son in her lap. The people in town gawked as the car crawled through the streets. "Yes, I believe I am," Heather replied. Felt bad for this truth. She feared why Val sought to ask her such a question. "Good. That's exactly what I would have hoped for you. I'm glad you found your place at last." Easily, but her eyes were on the road ahead of them. "And you, Val, are you happy?" Heather asked, half impulsively, half hurting for fear of a negative answer. "Oh, I am well enough. Don't worry, I have a lady. She's a little older than me, but maybe that will prove better for me. She's a mother, like you, but terribly stubborn. I worry about her all the time. Betsy constantly refuses my help. I'm not trying to tread on her pride, but she lives in this awful place, and she keeps refusing my offers to let her and her daughter live with me. I'd rather they live with me than where they currently do, but she won't leave." Heather felt terrible then. Val was in a similar tangle, it seemed. Heather was in Betsy's place. She wouldn't refuse this time, knowing what she knew now. "Perhaps I said too much. No one wants to hear about their former lover's new flame." Val chided herself. "No, no. I'm glad you found someone else. You deserve someone who loves you, Val. You're extremely good, so good it would be a terrible waste if a lover didn't know your goodness," she said before she could think to stop herself. "Well, I suppose I should thank you for that, Mrs. Sparrow," Val replied with a smile. "I hope your soldier appreciates you properly, too." Heather wished she could have made it up to Val somehow, but Val didn't want anything from her. She saw Val Farrar and Betsy LaBelle in town. Occasionally, Betsy's awkward teenage daughter, Reese, was there too. It was when Heather realized she and Reese had met before. The girl wore boys' clothes and walked after her mother and Val Farrar. Reese had a long braid back then and wore a straw sun hat with a purple ribbon. Heather remembered how the girl seemed spellbound to look upon her. "Reese, don't stare at ladies. It's not nice," Val chided when she caught the girl staring at Heather. Val was always alert, whereas Betsy seemed to move about in a dream-like detached state. She had a loose hold on Val's arm and a placid smile on her face. She was now at peace with her new life with Val Farrar. She never would have pictured that she'd meet a grown Reese during the war. Even less so would Heather have ever thought that she and Reese St. John would become lovers. Lying beside Reese made her recall with a jolt. "We've met before, a long time ago. You lived with Valerie Farrar and your mother, Betsy LaBelle." "I'm surprised you remembered. I thought I looked different back then." "You knew?" "Yes. You're one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen, Heather. I wouldn't easily forget that." Reese sat up and watched Heather carefully. "I'm several years older than you. I've been married before. Are you sure you don't want someone closer to your own age? A younger woman, without children. No, I want to help you, if you'll let me. All I want is to be with you, Heather, in whatever way you'll allow me to be, Reese said, those amber eyes of hers burning bright. Heather moved closer to Reese's side and kissed her lips. Reese didn't move for a moment, as if she couldn't believe that Heather had moved towards her, but soon she recovered from her own disbelief and kissed Heather back.